this, chairing this session, and he will give you more details on how you can ask questions at the end. But on behalf of the Saudi British Society, I want to welcome you. I'm William Patey. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the chair of the Saudi British Society, and we're very pleased to have our first webinar on behalf of the Saudi British Society. This is the second in a series of talks we've had. We had 3 young Saudis in person, 4 young Saudis in person last year when we did Saudi Arabia, the Future. And we're very pleased to have 3 young Saudis here today to continue this series, which I hope will go on into the future. But without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Mark Thompson of the King Faisal Research Centre, who will chair this webinar, and I'll hand you over to him.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. Lovely to see so many friends. If I could just reiterate what Sir William said, if you're not on the panel, could you please put your video onto mute and switch off your camera as well, please, because then we'll get a better reception. Okay, so thank you for the introduction. Thank you to everybody for joining us via Zoom this evening. As I'm sure you'll remember, the Society held a previous panel event in April 2018 entitled Kingdom in Transition, the Perspective and Aspirations of Young Saudis. And that panel provided an opportunity for the then 4 young Saudi PhD candidates, whom I'm very happy to say subsequently all became academic doctors, to share their insights about Saudi Vision 2030 from the perspective of their own areas of expertise, as well as their views on societal transformation and their aspirations for the future of Saudi Arabia. So we felt that this is an opportune time to revisit some of these themes, especially as we are all being impacted by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Hence, today's panel provides an opportunity for 3 young Saudi professionals to share their insights about the impact and possible consequences of the pandemic on the future of Saudi Arabia. As those of you who know me and my work comprehend, I have long stressed the critical importance of taking the opinions and aspirations of young Saudis seriously. In particular, as Saudi Arabia is a predominantly young country with an increasingly well-educated and interconnected youthful population that has a very clear idea about not just their personal futures, but also national development. Therefore, the Society is delighted to welcome Alharthi, Hadeel Ayoub, and Badr al-Mubarak as our speakers this evening. And of course, we are extremely grateful for their participation. Now, before I hand over to our speakers, just to let you know that we will have a Q&A session after the 3 presentations. But at any time during the course of the next hour, you can actually write the questions that you're interested to ask in the chat box, which you'll find at the bottom of the screen, and I will be referring to that after the presentations. So without further ado, our first speaker is Badr Alharthi, a Middle East specialist at Barker Langham and associate lecturer at Central St Martin's University of Arts, London. And her work and research focus is on innovation and strategy development. And she's going to discuss digital transformation in Saudi Arabia. Badr, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. And I have a presentation. I'll just share it with you. I think the host disabled attendee screen sharing. So William, can you please allow me to share my screen? Yeah, okay. So again, thank you, Mark and William. And I'd like to thank the Society for the invitation to be here. I've been in the UK for over a decade. I was a part of the Society as a student and now as a professional working in London. So it's a pleasure to participate in one of the Society's events, despite the global pandemic. But that shows us the value of technology. Now, these are unprecedented circumstances, and digital transformation has become a pressing necessity rather than a long-term aspiration in Saudi Arabia. IT helped the government and businesses alike alleviate the impact, the pervasive impact of COVID-19. More importantly, it will ensure sustainability and growth beyond the crisis. Now, the National Digital Transformation Unit and the National Digital Transformation Committee were both established in 2017 to oversee the digital transformation program in a way that ensures a transformation based on the creation of a digital platform and enriching interaction and effective community participation. The aim is to also accelerate the achievement of the 2030 Vision 3 pillars. A vibrant society that's a digital society, a thriving economy that's a digital economy, and an ambitious nation that's a digital nation. The Kingdom has adopted strategies that incorporate 5-year goals for which 3 executive plans were drawn. Currently, we're in the 3rd plan, which began in 2019, with expected conclusion at 2022. Here you can see where Saudi is currently ranked in comparison to other countries. The country continues to strengthen its digital infrastructure by deploying 5G networks and investing in 7,000 new towers, among other things. This has paid off, especially while the country was dealing with the disruption caused by COVID-19. There are benefits to digital transformation. It saves time, it's efficient, and it's effective. Sorry, I think I missed a slide. So here are some of the applications that have changed the lives of Saudis. I personally use at least 2 of them regularly, and I will elaborate more on that in a moment. So the government started laying down the foundations such as infrastructures, systems, and outreach in circa 1996. In the past 5 years, they've been accelerating their progress. An example would be moving basic consumers to digital citizens, upscaling digital services in priority sectors, particularly in healthcare and education. During the COVID-19 lockdown, the emphasis has been on enhancing the capacity of public servants to ensure continuity of service delivery. 94% of government agencies have staff who until last week were working from home. The national portal gov.sa has maintained reliable access to over 900 government services despite a surge in traffic when the curfew was applied nationally. There are remarkable accomplishments and initiatives in all sectors, most notably the smart government, where more than 26 million operations were carried out on IBSHIR platform, with an estimated saving of 15 billion riyals annually. I'm sure all my Saudi fellows here will have used IBSHIR before and appreciate the existence of this application. IBSHIR is one of the most crucial digital channels that have helped ensure continuous access to government services for citizens and businesses during the lockdown. One of my other favorite examples is the temporary platform linked to IBSHIR. The government created it and launched it for citizens who wish to come back home since international flights were suspended in the past 3 months. 2 of my sisters were able to register and were put on flights back to Saudi from London and New York, and were able to be with us here for Eid. Thanks to Yasser, the e-government program and e-murasalat system, the country has developed an integrated digital government. And this investment has paid off in securing business continuity. These digital government platforms have enabled flexibility in sharing data across the government ecosystem. Both were vital during this crisis and have accelerated the transformation toward a paperless government. Studies on the Kingdom have shown that digital transformation has pushed citizens to be more proactive and more innovative. It is the opposite of the traditional way of doing things. Previous generations might have felt that it is an intrusion to their way of life, but young Saudis, they embrace it and they revel in it. Some might argue that it is replacing humans or it is increasing unemployment rates, but in fact, it created new jobs. Yes, they do require certain technical skills, but there are new opportunities and new horizons to reach. When we look at the health sector The ministry was quick to develop mobile apps and build on existing ones. During the pandemic, I think they have, well, I think they have around 10 applications for doctors and patients. My family and I have used the Sahha app during the lockdown. The app was launched a few years back, and in the past 3 months only, it has provided more than 2 million consultations and prescriptions. When we look at education, the number of Saudi students in public schools alone is 7 million. They closed down schools on Tuesday. By Sunday, they were able to start delivering emergency remote teaching through TV channels, ministry applications, and websites. Again, because there was the necessary infrastructure. My sister in Riyadh is studying online with her school, but so can the girl living in a smaller city like Ar'ar and Al-Baha, meaning equal access to education for all. With the complete shutdown of educational institutions, the AIN, National Educational Portal, became the main channel of education for more than 6 million users. That's a tenfold increase in the portal's utilization. When we look at the business sector, the digital economy, where services are transacted through online channels, was growing rapidly even before the pandemic. Saudi Arabia is the third largest in the world in digital economic growth. And it is estimated, I mean, this is according to an EY report that I just read, the information and communication technology sector contributes to around 5% to total GDP and 9% to total non-oil GDP. During the pandemic, the kingdom capitalized on recent progress in the digital space through mobile apps, government service portals, and e-commerce. Some companies switched to working 100% online, so the economy can re-emerge from this lockdown with a renewed dedication to the private sector's potential and new opportunities for youth employment. The development of the sharing economy as well as the gig economy has been one of the top priorities of the government, as it particularly contributes to achieving one of the most important objectives of the 2030 vision, job creation. My brother is working in Riyadh with a startup that provides data science services and products. He joined them after finishing his undergraduate studies in London last year. The startup saw that SMEs in the government sector need and want these kind of services nowadays. Since data is, well, this is what he told me. He said, data is the new oil of the digital economy. I'm happy to report that the startup is doing very well. And this is because of the institutional, social, and financial support they've been receiving from the public sector and the private sector. Just to close out, leveraging on 2 decades of continued investment in modern digital infrastructure and robust digital government platforms, the country's digital capabilities have provided a solid foundation for key aspects of the COVID-19 emergency response, including continued access to various e-government services. I commend the efforts of the Ministry of Health. I applaud their extraordinary work. Ministry of Interior Affairs, Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense, they became one circle. They took care of their citizens, health, education, safety inside the country and abroad. This collaboration strengthened the links between them that I see continuing going forward. It created a connected kingdom. And that's all I have to say about this topic. I have actually more information, but maybe in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alada, for your very interesting presentation. Our second speaker is Hadeel Ayoub, a researcher in human-computer interaction and assistive technology. She is the founder of BrightSign, a wearable technology startup enabling innovations dedicated to facilitating communication for individuals with non-verbal disabilities. And Hadeel is going to talk to us about this. So Hadeel, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, William, as well for hosting this. And I thank the Saudi British Society for inviting me to be a speaker today. So today I will be talking about integrating accessibility during COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 in Saudi Arabia. So during the lockdown, we saw that there were a lot of new ideas and funding initiatives to help people transform into a full digital society. And just like Ghadah said, everything happened within a few days. Jobs were able to be operated distantly. Schools carried on an entire second semester of the year completely remotely. As a society, I would say that Saudis, we adapt very, very quickly. And we were very able to transform with the society and receive technology very, very well. I would say that we are tech savvy when we need to be. From my grandmother, who was able to join a family call in Eid with myself in London, my sister in Boston, my brother in Canada, even, played with the filters, and she was completely tech savvy, and she's 83. To my daughter, who's 9 years old and had to completely, do all of her classes online. I couldn't help her with every single class. By the second week, she was able to operate the online education portal completely on her own. So I'd say that we are ready to adopt new technology. We can totally handle situations like these. And this was a very good opportunity for everyone to realize how technology is very, very important and can keep us connected and does not disrupt our daily jobs or education or lifestyle. However, from my angle of being an assistive technology specialist, which is designing technology for people with disability, I could not ignore that there's a lot of people who could not access those services or their applications or the new, launched applications or online services due to their different disabilities. And so the hearing impaired couldn't really understand what was going on in an online classroom because the accessibility features were not enabled, especially in the first few days before that became an issue and people started to look at solutions. The visual impaired as well weren't able to operate the system without the help of a family member or a friend, if that was even allowed during the lockdown, which a lot of us couldn't access anyways. And so that made them even more isolated as individuals because they had no access to the platforms because there were no tools to help them access those services. They also didn't have access to their own helpers, whether they're interpreters or teachers or even, immediate family members who had their own jobs or classes to run. And so we saw a lot of I would say maybe education, maybe that was the first place where I saw myself accessibility tools coming to action, which is a very simple feature you can enable in any of the video conferencing tools just to allow transcription, which means that we can carry on the meetings the way we are, but everything appears in text format for people who are unable to hear, especially that they usually lip read and they're unable to do that in very small icons that we see right now on the screen. And that was also another opportunity for us to think about when we designed the post-COVID world, how can we do that with accessibility in mind? And I feel like moving forward, we are in a very, lucky stage where we are now creating those systems. And so it's very easy to put these tools and features early days, and it saves a lot of cost of integrating them later. Working in the UK, especially in the healthcare system, where, online systems and NHS systems and the digital world have been developed years and years ago. And so coming up with accessibility tools now and asking for that to be integrated means there's huge budgets and lots of time. But in Saudi, we are now creating those systems. They're very, very young systems, super modern tools, which means the accessibility is honestly super easy, will not cost any more money. And it means that more people can access those services. And it means that we have a seamless government operating on different levels, whether it's healthcare or renewing your passport or driving license or wanting to book a special targeted support service at home. If you can access all of that, it means we cater to everyone and we are including everyone. I would say that our major challenge is data. And so again, just like Ghadah said, data is our new oil. We do lack credible data for disability in Saudi Arabia, and I did a lot of research on that. And when I say credible, it means that I can triangulate my sources and find different numbers between, even a government source or a private sector source, and they're all, major in their areas, whether it's the Deaf Association, the Autistic Association, they have completely different numbers on simple thing like sign language users. And so even when I try to work with ministries or departments, I don't know the size of the problem. How many people are we talking about? Are we talking about hundreds of thousands or millions? And that makes a big difference, because it means that I can't allocate a budget for a service like that, especially that, disability comes in different combinations. And so you want to be able to classify and segment those different disabilities and put them in their right group so that you know how to cater to them. At the end of the day, all of these services the government is doing, and the vision of 2030 is about quality of life. And so how can they be more included in their job place? How can they have as close as possible as an experience in education and in the classroom as their peers? There is technology to solve that problem. It exists. We are using it now. We have the budget for it, but to allocate it and to give those people that experience also of independence, not only accessibility, is huge. We are there. We can absolutely do it. But we've got to know, we've got to build systems to collect data in the right way. And then we've got to communicate with the end users to understand their needs. And that's been a huge part of my research. Took a complete turn when I started working with the end users, because things on paper and things in books and online resources all sound great. But when you talk to the people, it just, for me, it was a huge U-turn. When I talk to the people, my technology is designed to help. I realized that their needs are completely different than what I thought they wanted. And so if we build those systems, we collect the data, and we've got the numbers, we can totally assign the services that they need, the budgets that they need, and include them in all of these new, fundamental applications that we are creating to have a seamless government operation. Now, I'd have to say that I recently, just again, like Ghadah said, we've got a huge scene of accelerators, incubators, lots of funding being injected for new ideas, especially in AI and technology. And so it's amazing that I think in 30 days, they wrapped up a hackathon about technology for disability, the brightest ideas, the most effective tools. And that's great. But then what? How are we gonna assign them to the right people? How are we going to integrate them? It's all doable. It just needs to be channeled very, very carefully. And I feel like we are there. And benchmarking with other, countries, I can say that we are ahead in terms of technology just because we are younger in that field. And that means we are using more advanced tools, and it means we are more prone to being flexible in mixing and matching all of these different services, which can be very, very difficult for countries that have established systems because they are harder to change and adapt. And just like we saw during the pandemic, everybody adapted, everybody was able to, pick up their daily jobs, education. I know that this is something, the very, I can't say a number because again, I have multiple different resources, but most of the resources I read kind of rounded up to the 500,000 mark. And so 500,000 people may seem like a small number, but if each and every one of them has a problem that can be solved by adding one tool to one of those systems and then completely, distributed around platforms, I feel like we can extend the quality of life even to that small number. And with the new system of the unified, I think it's called a unified login system in the government, which is basically one username. You log into all of the government services and all of your information is distributed across platforms. And I feel like that can make their lives even more easy and more independent. It allows us to reach them more easily and give them the services they need. Okay, so that's my alarm for my 10 minutes. I'm very, very happy to discuss this further in the Q&A. And thank you very much for giving me a voice and allowing me to share my insights.
Thank you, Hadeel, for highlighting, such an important issue. Our third and final speaker is Ghadah Al-Mubarak, who is actually a former student of mine from King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, and now a management consultant who focuses on advising financial institutions. And very soon, he will be an MBA student at the prestigious Massachusetts University of Technology. Ghadah is going to discuss the socioeconomic impact of coronavirus on state and society. Ghadah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Mark and the Saudi British Society for extending this invitation. I'm very humbled to be amongst you today. The topic I'll be covering today is the socioeconomic impact of COVID on the Saudi economy and state. I'm not an expert in economics nor on public policy. I am, however, trying to share a youth perspective on the socioeconomic impact of COVID in Saudi Arabia, having worked as part of a consultancy firm with government institutions, large private sector players, small and medium enterprises in various countries, but mostly in Saudi. Back in 2016, when I was studying with Dr. Mark in my senior year at KPPM, long before we found ourselves in this unimaginable situation, conducting our daily lives almost exclusively through screens. The Saudi government has announced an ambitious and unprecedented plans to transform the Saudi economy and society, unleashing a wave of optimism that traveled throughout the nation, including the university I was studying in, KPPM. The first set of goals and programs, whether on entertainment, investment, fiscal, and otherwise, were targeting goals to be achieved in the year 2020. Since then, there were ups and downs. Some targets were missed and others were hit and sometimes even exceeded. But directionally, the nation was heading toward a clear vision. The so-called lift-tail events, or black swans, are the enemy of planning. And no Saudi strategist, nor did any other person probably in this planet, foresaw an event of this magnitude in 2020. As a young Saudi Vision 2030 enthusiast and a close observer of the story of the Saudi economic development, I watched the unfolding events of this crisis with mixed feelings of anxiety, pride, and anticipation. The impact of COVID-19 on the Saudi economy is clearly significant. The Saudi government preemptively responded to the virus with strict enforcing of social distancing measures and putting cities into lockdowns. Although this has avoided us a public health catastrophe, it severely disrupted the private sector and affected its financial health. From a Saudi youth perspective, the virus produced three major shocks to the Saudi economy. First, the crisis disproportionately impacted the private sector, and in particular, the small and medium enterprises, and the still nascent startup sector, who lack the ability and the adaptability to adapt to the new environment. A recent survey by the Saudi venture capital company, a government-backed startup fund, showed that 67% of the surveyed companies experienced more than 50% decline in revenues, while roughly 50% of the surveyed companies have a survival period of only 1 to 3 months. Unlike, say, the United States, where the lockdown produced in the beginning a supply shock, followed by a demand shock when the unemployment reached record highs, the economic impact in the kingdom is mostly impacted by the supply shock. A recent survey to Saudi consumers revealed that there are as many consumers intending to increase spending during the lockdown as there are consumers planning to decrease spending. In other words, many consumers still have the willingness and the ability to spend, but their access to goods and services is limited. This is not a surprising finding, given that most of the Saudi labor force is either working for the government or for state-owned enterprises, giving the government incredible ability to control and influence the economy. Second, the worldwide fleet lockdowns led to a slump in oil demand as much as 20 million barrels per day, roughly 20% of global oil demand. This led to a sharp decline in oil prices. And although oil prices have recovered from its nadir over the past couple of weeks, the Saudi oil production figures are much lower now than it was before the crisis, further impacting the government's financial position. The government was also financially stretched in supporting the private sector. To finance a stimulus package in a low oil price environment, the government had to increase the debt ceiling from 30% to 60% debt to GDP, tripled its value-added tax from 5 to 15%, and increased tariffs across a wide range of products to the maximum allowable limit set by the World Trade Organization. Third, this crisis has worsened the problem of youth unemployment. The government and state-owned enterprises, the largest employer in the country, have announced suspending employment till end of year. The largest employers in the private sectors are the most impacted sectors from the crisis, the services industries like retail and restaurants, further affecting the prospect of employing hundreds of thousands of young Saudi graduates entering the full workforce each year. In responding to these challenges, the government has put together a wide range of health and economic response measures that were both immediate and substantial. Long before Saudi reached its 100th COVID case, it took preemptive measures that put the country ahead of the curve in handling the virus. Temporarily suspending the Umrah, for example, which was in the beginning criticized internationally, turned out to be a crucial decision in containing the spread of the virus. From an economic standpoint, the Saudi government announced a set of support packages targeting the private sector, totaling almost $61 billion. This includes measures covering 60% of the salaries of the private sector employees who were hit by the virus, and supporting banks with an excess of $15 billion with accessible loans to small and medium enterprises. This, along with subsequent critical decisions, demonstrated the effectiveness and the decisiveness of the government to swiftly make highly difficult decisions in times like ours, with cross-ministerial coordination rarely seen in the Saudi bureaucracy. These measures were well received by the Saudi public and the Saudi youth, reflecting this on a survey where Saudi ranked among the most optimistic nations in coming stronger and more prosperous after this crisis. Government effectiveness, especially in times of crisis, I argue, will be an additional source of legitimacy to the Saudi government in the coming years. Alongside these immediate challenges that COVID presents, it is also producing long-term challenges and opportunities. We are in 2020, the year when most of the vision realization programs are due, and COVID is hindering the country's ability from making progress in achieving the aspired goals. COVID had affected some of the very sectors the country is trying to grow, namely tourism and entertainment. Nevertheless, over the longer term, I believe COVID is producing more opportunities than challenges. COVID, for example, has accelerated the corporate shift to digital solutions, providing ample opportunities to Saudi startups to capitalize on the trend. Marsul, a delivery app, has grown explosively during the lockdown. The government even recognized you if you're a Marsul driver and would allow you to deliver essential goods while the lockdown is in place. The largest funding round for an early-stage startup ever happened during the lockdown, when the Saudi venture capitalists and angel investors invested in excess of $13 million in Noon Academy, a technology education company. The startup offers a platform for private online tutoring at a low cost. Right before COVID hit, startup funding in Saudi Arabia grew by a whopping 92%. Although COVID might present an immediate challenge, the structural digital shifts that COVID is accelerating in society will certainly play in the startup scene favor. The virus has also proved that working from home actually works, and in some cases, it even enhances productivity. When Fortune 500 CEOs were asked in a survey, the most frequently voted lesson from COVID is that working from home actually works. Even the most traditional Saudi institutions and companies who value in-person interaction tremendously have switched to a working from home model with surprisingly positive results. If post-COVID, working from home became more prevalent, it will dramatically help increase women participation in the workforce and open up a wide range of employment opportunities to various sections of the society. It might even shape some of the housing solutions citizens might opt to choose. The challenges that COVID is presenting on our society and economy is clearly great, but we as a nation have faced before severe challenges, geopolitical, fiscal, financial, and otherwise. In each one of those challenges, we emerged stronger. We did this together with our partners, and I'm confident and hopeful that we will emerge stronger from this one too, and again, with our partners. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hearing from the Q&A session and continue the discussion.
Thank you, Badr, very much indeed. From Boston, yes? So thank you. And thank you to all our panelists for their insightful presentations. If I can go back to Radha, maybe. I was very interested, Radha, from what you were saying, and I just wanted to ask you a question about what is probably one of the hottest topics at the moment amongst young Saudis, and that is basically about the coming academic year, which is not that far off. How do you see how do you see digital learning? What sort of place do you see that taking in the coming academic year?
Well, Mark, I think they did not announce any major plans or any regulations on that yet, but I believe they will be offering blended learning. So on campus or online, this is how it will be, just the same as it is in the UK. I mean, my mother works with Princess Noor University as a consultant, and this is what they will be going for. Schools, I'm not sure yet. I have two sisters who go to school here in Riyadh, and we're still not sure yet. But I think the safe thing would be to do it 50-50, 50% online, 50% in the classroom.
Okay, thanks very much. And Hadeel, going back to what you were talking about, and you mentioned about the various different ministries who are dealing with this. I just wondered, to what degree is there sort of an awareness of the need of the accessibility that you discussed across all sectors? I mean, is this something that is standardized, or do you find sort of great disparity between different sectors, for example? Because I don't really know anything about this, and it's fascinating.
So my communication was with the Ministry of Social Affairs. They do have a department dedicated to acquiring accessibility tools and assistive technology and assigning it to the users who qualify or who sign up to their service. And so this does exist as a service. We do have the major problem with families denying that their family members have a disability. Some of them don't want to reach out to get help, and they just prefer to hide them at home. We also have the other end of the spectrum who send their kids abroad where these services exist and are available, rather than having to look around or research how to get that done in the kingdom, especially education, because it's very hard to get these services in integrated classrooms so that the children can get the same level of education as their peers, but with specialized help within the same setting. And so, as I said, the awareness is there and the initiative is there. The funding is now there, and the structure, the infrastructure is there. It just has to all come together. I know of a potential project to create a complete academic system for the different kind of disabilities, to bring all of our kids back home so that they can get that done in Saudi. So it is happening, and soon everybody's aware of it, and I'm very happy to be part of that project as well.
Thanks very much, Hadeel. Go to Badr. You mentioned in your presentation about consumers being willing to spend, but then you also mentioned that sort of the majority of the Saudi labour force either works for the government or for a state-owned enterprise, and then you talked about sort of youth unemployment and how the private sector has been badly hit by COVID-19. So I wonder, in a post-COVID world, when we eventually get there, how can the private sector be made more attractive as a venue for job opportunities?
I think we are seeing, before the crisis hit, we are seeing a trend in which youth are more accepting and sometimes eager to work in the private sector more in the public sector. This is accompanied with the narrowing gap between wages between public sector and the private sector, alongside with the various challenges that private sector jobs would present, where a traditional public sectors back in the 90s or the 80s would be a job that will pay well but wouldn't give you as much challenges or opportunities to grow and prosper. Post-COVID, however, I would imagine that some of the sectors that might grow further, including tourism and entertainment, might be more attractive to young individuals to work on those sectors. However, it's difficult to be optimistic in the next 1 or 2 years, given the set of challenges that we're facing in the near term.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm looking now at the messages that are coming through in the chat, and if you do have any questions, then please type those in now, and we'll see, how many we can obviously answer. If you have a specific question for a specific panelist, if you could state that as well, then I can direct the questions to the right people. So we'll go back to Ghadah, if you don't mind, and because I have a question from you, and it's from Maha, a PhD student in London, and she wants to know, will this advancement in digital transformation in Saudi Arabia, what's it going to mean for Saudi women and equality?
Globally, there is gender disparity in STEM fields. And I think maybe Hadeel might have some interesting insight to share here on that. But it is worth mentioning that we have more women in STEM education compared to Western countries. The challenge remains in finding a job after graduation. But I still believe that women can take the lead on this, especially after the Vision 2030 rejuvenated our country and our economy, and also the digital capabilities of the country. It has empowered, digital transformation has empowered women to be able to start their own consulting firms virtually, and to be able to have more flexibility in the way they do their work, their business. I have a short story I can share here with all of you quickly. So my mother used to oversee 15 community colleges, and that was, I think it was over 10 years ago. And those colleges, they were in rural villages where there aren't even roads. So every other week she used to go visit one of those colleges. And on one of her visits, she saw a shepherdess with her sheep carrying her laptop and going to class. And she approached her to ask her about her experience at the college. And they did stay in touch. Later, after that girl graduated, and actually they used to teach them computer science, some coding and English, that girl was able to establish her own business online to sell products from her sheep. So she became a businesswoman, the daughter of that rural village. And I think, so again, it is empowering, and it does offer a lot of opportunities for women all over the country.
Thank you very much. Hadeel, would you like to add to that, as Lada said?
Yes, I get this question quite a lot when I do like interviews with the Western media, and I had one today, and they're like, how was it challenging for you as a woman to be in innovation and accessibility and all of that? I'm like, actually, it never was challenging. And you're the only people who ask me this question, because back home, I get exactly the same opportunities. And I never once thought that my gender was going to be standing in my way to pursue whether education or business or anything at all. I was able to completely independently set up my own company, secure funding and operate freely with no obstacles whatsoever. So why does this question keep coming up? And so, no, absolutely not. It just, whether I was, a man or a woman, this did not stand in my way of getting where I am now.
Okay, great. And Ghadah, would you like to offer the male perspective on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think male have traditionally been at least perceived as advantage to female in the labor market, and I wouldn't disagree with both Ghadah and Hadeel on that. However, I think going forward over the next sort of 2 to 3 years, challenges in the labor market are huge. and we expect more. I'm sorry, there's something needs to distract about this. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. I have a question here for Hadeel. Actually, it's two questions. The first one you actually already touched on, and it is, how willing are people in the regions or the smaller towns to admit to disabled family members? And that's actually something that you obviously just touched on yourself there. And the second part of the question is, how far are you working with the regional and smaller NGOs to achieve data? And are the NGOs also being sufficiently supported to fulfill this role?
Okay, yes, partially I kind of answered this. So basically, NGOs or government sectors, it's all the same. It all goes back to the people themselves to report and document their disability. And so if they're not willing to do that, then there's no way we know that they're there, they exist, and they need help, and we can give them help. The other thing is, I feel like when I worked with the ministry, they had lower numbers than when I worked with more private organizations who targeted those societies and tried to infiltrate them. And the numbers were so different that one of the institutions I was working with, they're called لأجلهم. So they do the Friday prayer completely in sign language. So they are in touch with the end user. They reported 2 million versus the 500,000 that I got from the ministry. And so they really need to work together and collaborate, because obviously the 500,000 will not stay that number forever. And, you know, and deaf communities marry from each other, which means their kids are more likely to be deaf. And so very, very quickly that number can multiply. And so, yeah, I feel like collaboration is key between all sectors. And it is happening now that they know and they are aware that there are services for them and it's completely free. So again, I'm very happy to be part of that project so that we can see real change very soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Rad has just sent in a comment as well, Rad, which is relating to what you talked about, you know, saying it's mandatory for 25% of learning processes to be online. Yes, and this was established a few years ago at King Saud University. That sort of mandatory 25%, do you think, I know you've already talked about blended learning, but do you think that this is going to, the percentage will increase?
I think it may. The main issue that we faced was the fact that we had to quickly readjust and still deliver education, especially I think for children. So my focus was on, my worry is about schools. The reduced number of contact hours. And I think a lot of parents struggled with that also, to be working from home and also teaching their kids at the same time. I mean, 25% sounds great, but maybe this is on a more higher education level. I don't know how it could be for schools.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any more questions from the audience? We have a couple of minutes left, so if there's anybody has got anything to say. If not, yes, I think we might have a, okay, here we have a question to everybody. Given the advantage we have seen by transforming to telecommute, do you think we will continue the working from home past COVID-19? Obviously, Ghadah, maybe do you want to come to that? Because you talked about that in your presentation. To what degree do you see people then working from home in the future? Do you think it's here to stay?
Yeah, this is quite an interesting topic. Many of the companies sort of that I've worked with earlier, whether in Saudi or here, would very much value in-person interactions. And sometimes employees would fly over take a 4-hour flight or 5-hour flight to attend a 1-hour meeting in which they will speak for 5 words and they will fly back again to where they came from. Yeah. And sometimes our friend also from London will come all the way from London to Riyadh to attend the meeting and again speak for like less than 2 minutes and then go back to London. And certainly that wasn't something that was conducive to lifestyle. If you want to maintain a good lifestyle within your company, and that disproportionately impacted, I would say, more the female sector of the society. What has been happening so far is that companies have been realizing that, hey, we can do the same amount of work using video conferencing with almost little impact on productivity. And sometimes when measured objectively, it turns out that the productivity has actually gone up, didn't go down. The reason being that it's very efficient to go from one meeting to another. You can do meetings in multiple countries at the same times while sitting in the same room. And we don't actually waste that much time talking in the sideways and the corridors and all of that. So objectively, even when measuring that through objective KPI, it turns out productivity has gone up. And that has sort of changed the minds and spirits of those executives who are currently running companies and public institutions in Saudi Arabia, which is incredibly surprising. What I would also say, it has changed the mind of the future management who are kind of N-1 and N-2, the second in line, who are more receptible to these kind of changes. And going forward, I can only be more optimistic that these kind of changes will be very helpful to maintaining a better work-life balance and maintaining a better productivity as well. So I'm hopeful in that direction.
Okay, thanks very much, Badr. Hadeel, how do you see this?
Education-wise, I know that we recently received something from the Ministry of Higher Education accrediting degrees that has more than 25% online delivery, because that was originally the cap, and they had to increase it because all of us did the second semester for us and our children online. So that is something I know as a reality. As a mother, I know that I have a teenage son that absolutely flunked all of his classes, did not acknowledge that school existed because there wasn't physical attendance, and he knew that he was going to pass with flying colors because they announced it. So no, it's not for everyone. Some people are more productive with hands-on education and some people are not. Equally with work, I wasn't as productive at home as I am in the workplace, and I took advantage of the lockdown being the only one in the building. So I went to work every day. I was completely on my own. My productivity level, I'd say, tripled because no one else was working. Some people are more structured than others, I'd say. It's not for everyone. It definitely saves a lot of businesses rent on office space. And so if everybody can work from home, it means I can hire someone from the States and Denmark and China and not have to work, pay for their offices or anything. It means I can cut my costs and increase my workforce. So it depends on your business model and what kind of conditions you're working on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I seem to live on Zoom these days permanently. I mean, Ghadah, Intisar has sent us obviously a final question to sort of wrap this up, but it follows on exactly from what Hadeel and Badr were just talking about as well now. Is it healthy? Is this sort of digital, virtual experience healthy for us? What's your thought on that?
I think, Mark, like you said, we're all struggling from Zoom fatigue. I'm exhausted, and it's important that we're all able to find the balance between our lives online and spending time with our family at home. But it is and I'd like to echo what Hadeel and Badr have said. It is cheaper, it saves time, energy, and it's good for business. You don't have to worry about rent, office space. And it does offer opportunities. I mean, now you think, why would I actually I don't actually need to, let's say, go and study at Harvard in Boston. I can do that just online, take my degree online. So it's I think it changes, for me personally, it changed the way I think of work and of education.
Hadeel, any final comment from you before we finish?
I think we all said the same things in different ways according to our experiences. I think we're very lucky that we are in this technology and digital age when this pandemic happened, honestly, even though there will be an economic recession because of this. But I think recovery is at its best point at this point in time in history, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much, Hadeel. Badr, final comment?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say a funny story where while I was incredibly happy that working from home happened, because as a management consultant, I used to travel 3 or 4 times a week, and that air travel fatigue used to hurt me a lot. My niece, however, was happy that she's not submitting any for homeworks. She used to be like an A student. And when work from home actually happened, she received email from her teacher to submit homework. She just doesn't pay attention. It's not as important to her in an email when it is in person. And I'd also say that less established professionals who need mentorship and would need more guidance, in-person guidance, they would also miss out on that. So I believe post-COVID, achieving some sort of a balance where you balance the travel and workload and the travel in-person interaction, I think that would be ideal. But that's only for Rabbil Alameen to decide.
Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our time. So thank you, everybody. Thank you. Obviously, thank you to our three wonderful panelists for all your insights and your time. We greatly appreciate you coming together with us this evening. Thank you to everybody at the Saudi British Society, Riyadh, Intisar, Edward, Sir William, who've worked, we've worked together to put this evening's panel together. And of course, thank you very much to all of you who have joined us for the event this evening. We hope to see you all again at a future Saudi British Society event, whether by Zoom or inshallah in person at some point. So until such a time as we do see each other again, everybody stay safe and well, and thank you very much.